Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel. It is the video 1005. I'm probably not going to make it to 2005, so I have to get that joke out of the way now, but welcome back. We're here once again. We're going to be talking about another Transformers toy line of small size but great significance. Now, usually when we do these looking back videos, it is always about some Transformer line that is fairly obscure, right? It's always about, Robot Masters, or it's Cloud. It's one of those, weird offshoot lines that we don't really get to really talk about anymore because they just kind of get put by the wayside or even completely forgotten. But this one is hard to forget. This was a main line for a brief moment. This is Transformers Classics, which you might be wondering, why are we staring at the '07 movie poster if we're talking about classics? Because the only reason this toy line exists is because of production delays. This movie was originally supposed to come out in 2006. We were going to go straight from the Cybertron toy line directly into the '07 movie toys, and maybe the delay helped those toys develop a lot more, because I do think that toy line is both rushed and good at the same time, weirdly enough. Point being, the movie got held back, which means they needed something to fill the gap. Not a full year's worth of toys, but just so they can say 2006 was more than just the tail end and leftovers of Transformers Cybertron and whatever we can figure out for universe at the time. So we got what we started calling Transformers Classics. I don't have a title gallery for you because there's no official logo for Transformers Classics. We only knew about that line because that's what it was listed as in the store computers, and because of this screenshot that came from I believe a DVD release from one of the 2-packs. It's one of the only official things that actually said, yeah, these are called Transformers Classics. So I have to use this card to demonstrate that. Now, the line picked up from where Cybertron left off, with a few size classes taken out and a few returning ones coming in. So we had it's a very brief line, and because this is a filler line, they did what any good filler Transformer line does: abuse old molds for repaints. So the Legends of Cybertron toy line was relatively successful as a good entry point into Transformers Cybertron's toys. For a mere $5, you could get a pocket-sized Transformer that was fully functional, detailed enough to tell who the character was. Very simple in articulation and function, but they are entry-level Transformers. So a lot of them got repainted in for classics, and a lot of them got some interesting ones, So Scourge becomes Tripticon here, which is always interesting to see as one of the more bizarre choices in the line. You're also going to see things like just random characters, like as if they were just picking characters who kind of fit the molds they were using, and also names that they wanted to hold on to. Fireflight, Perceptor, Menasor, Whirl. They threw a Whirl in there because they had a helicopter available. There was also Leo Prime, which is technically the first original character of this toy line, but technically not. This is the first time that any lion outside of the standard Lio Convoy was done up in Lio Convoy colors, and the first time the character had any kind of representation in Transformers in the US. This is also the only Beast representation for the entirety of Classics, which otherwise focus on being very, very G1 centric. But it creates this interesting point in history. Later on, the Leo Prime mold would be eventually redone. The original Leo Breaker mold would be done up in the same color scheme, and then we had years and years of any random lion getting turned into Optimus Prime colors. We also had this come out, which I think is hilarious. So, a big deal for the Transformers live-action movie was for Hasbro to regain the trademark to Bumblebee, because, of course, being one of the most popular G1 characters, they wanted him to be the star of the live-action verse. So, we didn't keep Bumblebee as a trademark through the 90s, because you can't trademark a Bumblebee toy and then just call it Bumblebee. That's too close, it's not trademarkable. So ironically, it was harder to use Bumblebee during Beast Wars. But that meant that DC got to use the trademark for their Teen Titan character. But around 2006, that trademark got abandoned, and Hasbro's typical strategy at the time was to throw the name onto things as fast as possible. So they made sure that the first thing coming out of the gates, the simplest thing they could do, was a quick repaint called Bumblebee in order to secure the trademark in time for the movie. What I love about this is that if you look at the original design spec, the original design sheet for Armada Hotshot, the name Bumblebee does appear on it. Apparently not meant to be his name, more or less just designating the kind of role that Hotshot would be playing in the Unicron trilogy. So I love the fact that it comes full circle with a Hotshot toy actually being redone and renamed Bumblebee. I just like that. Moving up from there, they decided to bring back the 3-pack Minicons, and they did this in a weird way. So what we ended up getting was leftovers from what were going to be brand new Minicon molds for the 2-pack Minicon sets from Cybertron. Now those I remember coming out rather late in Cybertron's run, as if they came up with the idea at the last minute, or if retailers just didn't really want to have one more Transformer product on the shelves until more sold through. For whatever reason, they didn't have time to get all of these out. And we have no idea what the original 2-pack assortment was going to be. But as a result, you ended up with these kind of fascinating team designations and names that don't really associate themselves very well with each other. So, for instance, you have like Dive Bomb, Firebot, and Strong Arm here as the Night Rescue Team, whatever that means. And you also had things like the Dirt Digger Team. You had the a brand new Demolition Team. But you also had things like the Dinobots. They brought back the Dinobot name for this set, and not only are these like delightfully named dumpy, the one on the left is Terrorsaur. Little bit different and kind of ironic sitting next to a red Pteranodon Transformer. But these 3-packs were very, very oddly mixed. But they did do what you see here. They finally gave us the long-demanded Beast Minicons, which apparently was the plan that never came to fruition. But we're kind of going through all these smaller ones because these are not the ones you remember classics for. You remember classics for the Deluxes and Voyagers that were released, which of course starts with a proper Bumblebee toy, and a fantastic one at that, coming as this little like kind of mix between, some kind of modification of like a Mini Cooper, and then little just like a little sporty 2-door kind of car, and it works really, really well. Like, this is such a good update of the original Bumblebee. Also, because of his small size, they included a little bit of extra gimmick and accessory to him, because, back then, when a toy came up smaller than you expect for the price point, they actually included things to make up for it. So this toy was significant, because this not only was the return of Bumblebee for the first time since G2, and the first brand new mold that Bumblebee had gotten since Classics Pretenders. No, this was also the first time that we had gotten a long-running tradition of repainting a Bumblebee into Cliffjumper. Yeah, this is where it starts. This would be a trend that would continue for a very, very long time. Moving on from that, we also have the Grimlock. We talked about this Grimlock recently in a Grimlock-centric video. I still really, really like this toy, and I love the idea that it is more based on the Pretender Grimlock figure rather than the original G1, because it lets him do some new things. And he's still a very fun, weirdly asymmetric toy to mess with. I really, really like this one a lot. And he got some interesting repaints over the years, but the original's still really cool. It's a fun toy if you ever get a chance to track it down. Rodimus Prime, one of our few 86 representatives in Classics. Now, he is fun for the things he gets to include. The little flip-out buzzsaw is fun. The way his engine is also this kind of like jet turbine in the back is kind of cool. Or, rather, his gun, his missile launcher, I should say. We've talked about this toy as like very middle of the road, which back then there are far better figures, and today, yeah, he does come across very middle of the road. Back then, it was just cool to actually get a modern, up-to-date Hot Rod toy. And the fact that it's technically the first time he had had a Earth mode, Like, this is like actually designed on actual Earth cars. It's not just some like super futuristic, a muscle car that the original one was designed as. That also kind of makes him kind of significant. But again, good toy, good toy. It's also good to point out at this point that you'll notice no traditional Autobot or Decepticon symbols on these figures, only the rub symbol. So they were really, really pandering to G1 fans on this one. Mirage is, for my money, the one in this toy line that has aged the best. Yes, it's a very scrawny take on Mirage, but it is a very, very nice figure with a very high level of articulation for the mid-2000s. Keep in mind, Cybertron brought a lot of articulation back into Transformers. Armada lost a lot for the sake of gimmicks. Energon did better. Cybertron's where it really came back. So getting this guy was kind of insane. This is like the first time a Spider-Man figure had like crazy levels of articulation. It felt good. It felt right. It felt like there was a ton of things I could do with this toy that previous iterations of Transformers didn't allow me to do. It's a very fun figure. I recommend the Crasher version, or Fracture rather, but it also came out as drag strip, which is kind of fun as well. Yeah, again, really solid toy. Really good toy that I think holds up pretty well. I want to focus on Astro Train a little bit more, though, because this was super ambitious. Keep in mind, to date, to this point, triple changers in Transformers became exceptionally rare, and when they did come out, they really weren't what you would expect. You know, it wasn't G1 with two very distinct vehicle modes. It was things like Transmetals, where, you know, their beast mode kind of folded into something that could pass for a vehicle, or, you know, jets coming out of the side of a cheetah. That was a thing too. But later on, the toys when they were called triple changers were things like Cybertron Megatron, where like the front end of his car folded to the side, and now those are supposed to be wings for a jet. They were very loose on what counted as a triple changer. What originally, like in G1, would have been closer to Trax's flight mode. But this was a proper triple changer, albeit with some interesting switches. Yes, it's a very bulky space shuttle, but I think the front end of the bullet train actually works well to keep like this aerodynamic look to it. You could pass these off as big thrusters or something. I think it still looks pretty good considering everything else it does. And then you get them updated bullet train mode, which again, a little bit messy for a bullet train, but I think this figure does get lost a lot. For the price that it was, for the era it was in, and for the first time they had done a proper triple changer in like over a decade, I think this toy had a lot going for it. I thought this was a really, really fun figure. I still think this is a fun figure. I've got the Henkei version. I will pick that up and mess with it at random times if I'm going through the bins. But this is not the Deluxe. When we're talking about classics, there is only one Deluxe, and it is the Deluxe of the line, and that would be the Starscream. The Starscream that still haunts us today, thanks to the Earthrise Seeker mold. This was a really revolutionary toy at the time. Here's a Starscream that could turn from vehicle to robot without any part forming whatsoever outside of his weapons. You know, which that was typical for Transformers, so we don't really argue on that one much. But just the fact that they could pull that off was pretty impressive. I remember this toy for being significant because when the toy was off shelves, suddenly the aftermarket price went from $10 to $50, as everyone kind of figured out oh wait, this was a good toy? This was actually a really good Starscream? Wait, what? This is also the toy where you can really see the classics idea a lot stronger. While they are the original characters, they were striving to do different things with the toys deco-wise to freshen them up. So you have Starscream here looking far more like a stunt show jet than a traditional fighter jet. Of course, this mold would get retooled into Ramjet for the line as well. That proved a little bit more of a more traditional, but still like a modernized paint job on it. And then, of course, later on, we would see Skywarp as well as a 2-pack with a white Optimus Prime as Ultra Magnus. And that was it. Remember, this was a line that was designed to live for about 6 months until the movie toys were ready to go and the movie was close to being finalized. So we didn't really have time to get all 6 Seekers out, which caused a lot of strife in the fandom for a while. It's very upsetting when you can't even complete the original trio, and here we got 2 of the originals and 1 of the Coneheads, which kind of left a bad taste in all of our mouths. BotCon did have to come to the rescue. Their Games of Deception multi-pack did include the Seekers that were missing from the Classics arrangement, so this for a long time became one of the most expensive BotCon sets, specifically for that reason. Now, as Hasbro found out that mold was so popular and the demand was still screaming high, they decided, okay, let's figure out ways of producing these again. Universe 2.0 would produce Starscream one more time in more cartoon-accurate colors, and then they would figure out over the years how to get the other Seekers out without violating their agreement with BotCon, which said these toys will only be available at BotCon. So you had like Thrust and Dirge are a little bit easier because all they had to do was tool new wings, and then just wait a long time, and maybe people will forgive us for the Thundercracker. Regardless, that Seeker mold became one of the most popular molds of all time, ending off its lifespan with over 30 uses overall. Absolutely insane numbers for one toy mold. As long as we're talking about multi-packs, there were a few multi-packs in this line as well. The Energon Constructicons came back as a new version of G1 Devastator. Granted, it's pretty rough considering, only 3 molds are here, but they tried. They tried. And you can see why. It's Devastator. It's one of the most classic Transformers there is. Of course, they're going to put out something for it, for this line. There's also the infamous 2-pack of Optimus Prime and Megatron that came in multiple ways. So depending on what region of the world you were in, you either got the version that included the Ultimate Battle DVD, like the US, you got a abbreviated, truncated version of the box that included only the 2 Deluxe toys, or you got individual releases. So it was kind of all over the place. Yes, this is the Optimus with the infamous spinning torso gimmick that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's weird because the rest of the toy line doesn't actually include any heavy gimmicks. In fact, Hasbro was actually quoted at one time to asking Takara, how did the Classics toys come out so good? And Takara's response was, you didn't make us add gimmicks to them. Well, there were a few gimmicks in the toy line, and it did encompass this smaller Optimus Prime, as well as the Megatron, who had a spinning blade gimmick on his right arm. These toys aren't all that bad, they're just weird. Weirder is the fact that this Megatron, to the best of my memory, is one of the last times that a Megatron toy was produced that was actually designed to represent his Generation 2 counterpart, with the front of the tank becoming the chest. I might be forgetting about a Legends class figure somewhere around there. That occurs to me now, but as far as like full-size, full-featured figures, this is the last time. Everything else has been purple and green camo on a flat chest, which is not where you want to see it, right? It's just wrong. Weirdly enough, this toy was also never produced in those colors, so figure that one out. But as long as we're talking about Optimus and Megatron, we need to get to their Voyager class toys. So this one had an interesting history. So apparently at one time they were planning to release a Deluxe Optimus Prime, who would then be released as well as a Voyager with a trailer. So that ended up getting scrapped and the toy was upscaled to Voyager instead, which, number one, I think created a far better toy with its hidden weapon gimmicks that weren't intrusive and a really, really good silhouette and transformation. This was the gold standard Optimus Prime for years, and I still think this is a very, very good toy. But number two, and maybe even more significant, this I think is where the third-party toys really kicked off. This is the toy that really kind of pushed a third-party market to exist in Transformers. Because without a trailer, unofficial companies started trying to fill in the gap. producing trailers that were more in line with the classic styling, and then, of course, much more authentic G1 trailers as well. But this was and while we've had upgrade sets in the past, additional weapons, or even classics Cliff Jumper, with one of the very first upgrade sets, creating a brand new head and his bazooka weapon. This was one of the first times that a fully complete item was produced and sold by a company not associated with Hasbro and Takara, but still meant to finish off a Transformer. This is what emboldens third party. From here, we get things like the City Commander armor for the Classics Ultra Magnus that we saw previously. That's when we also get things like the Protector armor, so you could upgrade Rodimus into Ultra Magnus. And from there, it snowballs into, why don't we just make full-on figures? This is where the market starts. This is what proved it was viable. And this is the reason why we still have third-party toys to this day, for better or worse. Yeah, blame Classics Optimus, or blame Hasbro for not releasing him with a trailer. If he hadn't come with a if Cliff Jumper had come with a retooled head, and if this Optimus had been released as a leader class toy with a trailer, I think the third-party market doesn't exist the way it does today. We also need to talk about the Megatron. This is the last time a full-size gun Megatron was ever sold in the US. This is the last mold, I should say. This was repainted a few times. They could get away with it from time to time in the right circumstances. But you can see where toy laws had shifted since G1. Not only did it have to be a very different and unrealistic gun based off a Nerf gun rather than the Walther P38, he also had to be in super bright colors, exchanging his grays for off-white and a lot of his black for bright purple. And of course, the safety orange caps had to be on both the scope and the barrel. Obviously, if you wanted a G1 accurate one, go to Takara. They produced more than one. But this is what they had to do in 2006 to release a gun Megatron. 10 years later, releasing a toy gun had to incorporate things like this. This is a Han Solo Super Soaker gun, and this is obviously highly inaccurate, but this is how strict toy laws have gotten. When you ask me why don't they make gun Megatron anymore, the laws have gotten stricter. Simple as that. You know, do you want Megatron in bright orange and blue featuring a gun that looks almost unrecognizable as a gun? That's what they would have to do today. I personally don't want that. And even if they could, people will argue Shockwave as well. No, because look at how much the law changed in 10 years. Those laws continue to change. They continue to get tighter. So they're not gonna risk doing another gun that's, you know, in a couple years can't be retooled or repainted or re-released in any way anymore. So just keep it simple. Keep them a tank. That's why. As you can tell, I've had this debate many times. I'm not interested in this debate anymore. If they could have done it, they would have done it because it would have printed the money. Yeah, that's as simple as that. Stop asking for it. Legally ain't happening. We can also talk about Jetfire, who is a pretty interesting case in not only producing a Jetfire that looked like, you know, edging close to the Valkyrie, edging close to the Macross toy, but also the first attempt to create him cartoon accurate because he had a removable helmet for the first time. Helmets and masks would become a mainstay for Jetfire toys to emulate both cartoon and his toy designs, depending on which way your nostalgia leans. But that is the bulk of the toy line we'd call classics. Very short line. Only 2 waves of deluxes that amounted to 6 figures total, and only 3 Voyagers across 2 waves. Now, there are other toys, like we said with the Multipacks, that do incorporate into classics. It became a catch-all for a short while for exclusives. When commemorative series dried up, they still wanted to release Soundwave, so he became a classics toy. And this is, again, kind of special because it's the first, and to my knowledge, the only time the original Soundwave mold has been released with the Sound Blaster tape deck, meaning it's the only Soundwave that can hold 2 of his minions. That's kind of a cool little trick, kind of a cool little inclusion. It's also where Masterpiece Starscream ended up getting dropped in. To this point, Masterpiece toy, the Optimus Prime, had been released as something of a specialty item, kind of separate from everything. So this one came in actual classic style packaging, however, and it technically falls under that umbrella. There's a few things that do. I'm not going to bother covering every single one. And then there's the ones we lost along the way. I did mention that we lost a trailer for Optimus Prime back when he was only a deluxe release. We also lost a Soundwave who would have been a Voyager class and turned into an SUV. We also lost a Cosmos that Hasbro deemed too boring in alt mode to release, as well as a few other little things here and there that would have been cool to get, things that ended up eventually filtering into other toy lines, only for those to get canceled as well. Cosmos was kind of cursed. But that's basically Transformers Classics in a nutshell. For such a short line, it had an enormous significance on the Transformer brand. Not only things like securing Bumblebee, ensuring, also telling Hasbro, these characters are still marketable. There is a nostalgia market out there who will eat these things up. If you produce one Seeker, produce all 6 Seekers. We like Devastator, but we'd prefer a proper one. Just in general, you can market to us and it can be successful. Also, third-party Transformers. That became a thing because of this line. Transformers would, from this point on, continue in 2 separate toy lines. Universe 2.0 would come later on to start not only re-releasing Classics toys, but filling in more gaps to the original G1 line, and we have been stuck with Generation 1 toy releases since. So, thank you to Classics, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time.